Hey everybody, welcome back to the Mysterious Huntsman Show. It's the show where we explore strange encounters, hidden history, and a lot of unexplained events. I'm your host, Paul, and you can find this show on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and all your major podcast platforms. And if you want to follow the show or just reach out to me if you have a story of your own and you'd like to be a guest on the show, get up with me. And all you can do is check the links in the description or find me on social media by searching Mysterious Huntsman. Now let's get into tonight's amazing story. I'm super stoked about tonight's guest. Tonight's guest is Ullrson Demori, a researcher, ranch owner who says, let me add, also an author, but he says his land is being visited, watched, and possibly inhabited by something most people are afraid to mention. He says these aren't passing shadows or distant howls. He describes repeated encounters, intelligent behavior, and creatures that match chilling reports of what many call Dogman. It's an upright, wolf-like being said to stalk the forests of North America and even reaching out into the rural areas, or actually in the city areas for now. Are these undocumented animals, or are they just something far stranger operating just beyond the edge of our reality? Tonight, Ullrson joins me to tell his story of what he's seen, what he's heard, and why he believes something non-human is sharing his land. So welcome back to the cabin, everyone. Hey, man, welcome to the show. I'm really thankful that you spending your time with us tonight.
All right. Thank you for having me.
I was going to say, I saw you on YouTube, I saw you on TikTok, and I know you've just recently released a book, and I was like, I had to have you on because your story is very intriguing, man. I really appreciate you coming on here and sharing your time.
Well, thank you. So my YouTube is at Demori, or Ullrson Demori, so ULLRSDEMORI. I am on TikTok, Ullrson Demori. I post a lot of the videos that I get whenever I'm out doing the research. And I use the term research tentatively because for the most part, I'm researching essentially my ancestral land. My family's been here for over 150 years. And I'm trying, some of it's sold off, some of it's being sold off. And so I'm trying to document all of the historical buildings and everything else. Growing up out here, the place is haunted. I mean, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. I go into some of the detail in it in my book, which my book is Welcome to Weird Shit, Texas.
I like it.
I have to credit my wife for that title. She convinced me just to kind of write everything down and go from there. And it kind of explains a lot of why I reacted the way I did the first time I ran into one of these upright canines in my adulthood. Now, I hadn't seen them walking on two legs whenever I was younger, but I had seen extremely large canines running through the fields and through the woods whenever I was younger, as well as several of my friends saw them. You know, we had the paranormal activity in the house. We still have the paranormal activity in this house. It's even been caught on live streams and everything else whenever I've been on shows. So you never know what's going to happen. But essentially, you know, I was tormented as a child by paranormal, including even some cryptid once I got into my teenage years, if you want to call it cryptid. At the time, internet was still kind of new, so you had to do all your research through books and everything else. And so what I found that was tapping on my window at night was described as a ghoul. And then, of course, later on, you know, after creepypasta and all that other stuff, you end up with the names of pale crawlers and rakes and stuff like that. So I've had my run-ins with that, you know, things that are just pure straight out of nightmares. In the line of business that I'm in, I run into all kinds of the weird. As far as that goes, I do private security now. I was in the military beforehand and then did private contracting for a bit. And then, of course, came home to the farm. After my father passed away, stuck around on the ranch, and we started seeing more signs and more signs of stuff. The first run-in with a dogman in my adulthood, our dogs were acting weird. They didn't want to go outside to go potty. They refused to walk out that door. They were terrified. And, you know, most of the time they'd be barking or something like that. But no, they were quiet and they were cowering. And I thought, okay, this must be a mountain lion or something like that out here. So I start looking around with a flashlight and I get eye shine. Okay, it might be a big coyote or a big mountain lion, something like that. It's not where any of the cows should be, and it's not where any of the horses should be. It's outside of the horse pen. I start walking closer to it, and I see a very, very large canine, one that's about the size of a cow. It is crouched down in the grass, watching the pen that has my mule in it, as well as some of the other horses. It was easily the size of our mule, maybe a little bit bigger. It kind of looks at me and, well, I'm sorry, but farm rules are if it's a predator and if it's looking at my livestock like it's dinner, then it's not going to survive. So I use my service pistol. I shoot it broadside. And this is a 40 caliber Glock. Very simple, effective, use it as boat anchor and still move forward with it. It hits it broadside. You can see the weight shift on it as it got hit. Then it stands on all fours, turns towards me, and stands up on its hind legs. At this point, I'm in disbelief, for one, because there shouldn't be anything in Texas that cannot be dropped by 40 caliber straight into the lung chest cavity. That's unheard of. When it stands up, basically the thoughts through my head are, well, Valhalla, here I come. Because, for one, I'm not going to run from it. There's no use in running. I'm going to put more lead into it. I do a failure drill to it. So 2 to the chest, 1 to the head. The shot to the head, it shakes its head. You hear a grumble, and it turns and just walks away. Doesn't run away, just walks away. I go to the area where it was. There's a little bit of blood, but not what there should be. Not by any means. Just a few drops. And of course, I don't have the state of mind at the time to try to collect it. And I'm pretty much thinking, well, I'm supposed to go to work, but now I got to go change my underwear. So, yeah, I get back. Luckily, I did not do that, but it was definitely one of those moments of just about needed to. So I go to work that night, and I'm sitting in the middle of a vacant parking lot in my vehicle next to the woods, and I'm only 20 miles from my home. I'm sitting here like, okay, has this thing followed me? The whole night, I'm sitting here like, what is this thing? What is it? I have no idea what it is. I thought it was a skinwalker. I didn't have any clues. So I started going on the forums and everything else and trying to look and locate what it could be. Finally, somebody had said the word Dogman to look into that. So I started looking that up. I'd reached out to a couple of podcasters and everything else. There to start with, I was very timid about a lot of this stuff and coming forward with it. Because we had several interactions with it afterwards. And I did a couple of shows. I wouldn't come on camera and everything. It was kind of one of those things. I was scared of coming forward with it. I eventually got in touch with a couple of other podcasters and a couple of researchers that actually were able to, help move things along and help me understand a little better about what I was dealing with and how to process it. These things are smart. I mean, a couple of weeks after that first encounter, it was deer season. I was sitting in a pop-up deer stand in the middle of a field. I had a little feeder that was 50 yards from me. And so that's what I was watching. I had a lever action 45 long Colt with me. So nothing for long range, because I wasn't expecting to try to do any 200-yard shots or anything like that. There was no reason to, because the deer would come right up there to me. I'm nestled in between some hay bales, some round bales, with that pop-up blind. And my wife texts me and says that looks like there's something big coming down the fence line to where I'm at. Sorry about that. Something big coming down the fence line where I'm at. And so, okay, I'm looking towards that edge of the field. And this is where, I got my first video of this thing. Because here it is. It comes out of the tree line into the field through the barbed wire. It's every bit of 4.5 to 5 foot to the shoulders on all four. It does not move like any cat I've ever seen or anything else. It's black. It's long. It just moves across the field like there's nothing there. It's 200 yards away from me, and I'm recording this thing with an old iPhone. And the video is on my YouTube, and it's also on my TikTok. Well, it moves probably 30, 40 foot in the blink of an eye. Then all of a sudden, it stands up and looks right at me on its hind legs. That's the point of time where I decide it's time to pack up and get out of there. And so that's what I do. Pack up. We leave. The scary part is later that night, the wife and I were going to go get some food. So we were leaving. As we were leaving, we saw something across the road on the cattle guard. We stopped, and it was barbed wire that was dragged across the road. And it was coiled to where, if I was actually to drive across it, it would have gotten tangled up in the axle. Now, the barbed wire that was there, it had been coiled up and hanging on a T-post over there for mending fences, so that you always have some there, because that was an area that the cows would always tear up or something would always happen. So we always kept barbed wire there. That way we could mend the fences easier. Something had taken it off of the T-post and then strung it across the road. And to me, that was a booby trap. I'm sitting here thinking the same thing. So I've got my pistol drawn when I get out of the truck. My wife has her pistol in her lap, and I get out, and of course, you can feel something watching you. It's just heavy air. You know you're not alone. The wife takes a couple of pictures. In one of the pictures, you can see behind some of the gas well equipment, very distinct, a silhouette of a canine. You can see the pointy ears. You can see, a decent silhouette of it. Problem is that the equipment that it's behind hits me mid-chest. So the silhouette of this thing would have had to have been easily 6.5, 7 foot tall. So that's rather large. We go through that. I have a couple of other interactions with it and everything else. We start to notice that there's more than one. We're able to actually see them often enough to know that there's a black one, the solid black one, which is the one I ran into the first time. Then there's one that's even bigger than it, that is a silverish color. Well, the silverish color one has been reported by other people. Somebody spotted it crossing one of the county roads out here, and it had been reported, and it had been covered on a couple of other shows of it as well. They seem to be a mating pair and have a pack, because there's also some that are smaller, about 6 foot. They act more curious as far as the smaller ones do. Our first interactions were a little aggressive, most likely due to, again, me shooting something that I viewed as a predator. That's kind of one of those things. I mean, mountain lions, bobcats, we don't want them out here. And before anybody says, well, they're there first, no, they weren't. This was cleared off farmland. We've been here for 150 years. I'm fine with living with them around, but once they start coming to the house, that's the problem. Once they start trying to get into the pens with the other animals or trying to take out our livestock, then they become a nuisance and they need to be removed. If they keep to themselves and stay off in the woods, there's no problem. But that one, for whatever reason, was watching my livestock that night. There was probably a little bit of retaliation on their part. We did have a horse that it was blind in one eye already, so it only had vision out of one eye. And we came in whenever it was a sleet storm, and we're not sure if she had run into something or what, but she was in a pen that we had cleaned everything out where it should be safe for her, where she wouldn't get hurt for any reason. She had, it looked like 3 slashes right across the side where her good eye was, and her good eye was not there anymore. We couldn't get her calmed down. We did have to essentially euthanize her because there was just no way she was going to recuperate from that kind of a traumatic event. Yes, horses can survive blind and everything else. However, whenever it's something that traumatic, it's the same as a person going through PTSD. I mean, you're going to have. I did not want her suffering, so we made sure that she was not suffering. And whenever we did that, it was one of those things that it was nighttime, shine the lights, and sure enough, there's eye shine. It was the yellowish orange, spaced about 8 inches apart, and about 8 foot up in the brush on the fence line. So it's kind of one of those, okay, that's not a cow. They, so whether they did that or not, we don't know. It's just kind of a little too coincidental for us. After that, we really didn't have much issue with them from the livestock or retaliation part. However, we ended up discovering that the house was in the middle of a turf war. There was the pack on one side of us, and on the other side, there was a reddish brown one that was male. That one you would smell before you saw them. So the pack, they just smelled like wild dogs. A farm dog that's been sitting outside, a little gamey, but not bad. This thing smelled like stale dog urine and rotten meat. It was horrible. You could smell it a long ways off, and it was aggressive. It would come up, hit the side of the house. It would come up, run across the roof. We ended up putting lights all around the house just to kind of keep it. We figured out they don't like being able to be seen. They don't like being in the light. We have seen them in the daytime, but they don't like artificial light for some reason. And so we had to adapt. Whenever I'd go do chores here, I was used to always carrying a pistol anyways, just because of coyotes or wild pigs, anything along those lines. But I adapted and started carrying rifles, something with a little bit more penetration, trying different options, basically, trying to figure out what's going to stick, what's going to work, because obviously a 40 caliber didn't work. And the going theory on that is that their bone density is too thick for penetration on that you have to have something that can punch through a little bit better than that. Kind of like a pig. You know, you can hit a pig right in the head and it doesn't go through. It'll just bounce off. So that's what we suspect is kind of going on with these things. If you don't get a perfect shot in, it's going to glance off.
I was going to ask you if I could jump in real quick. First of all, I'm afraid I misspelled, or not misspelled, but I mispronounced your name. So please forgive me for that at the beginning.
You're good.
But and dude, thank you so much for your service. By the way, I meant to tell you that earlier off the line there, but and I know you hear that all the time, but I really appreciate it. But have you noticed you've got obviously wild boar or wild pigs, you got deer. Have you noticed a decline? Like you hunt on your property.
Yes.
Like, so have you noticed a decline in any of the animals out there?
These things like bacon.
Well, who doesn't, right?
Yeah. Used to, we'd see a sounder of 60 or 70. And in the past few years, I might see 3 or 4.
Wow.
And so, you know, we used to get the fields completely torn up.
Yeah.
Like we were cutting brush hogging one time and nearly rolled the tractor because of how bad they tore up the field. So in a way, I'm kind of glad these things are around and eating them. You know, it's like living in Africa with the pride of lions. You know they're there. You know what? You know you don't want to give them the opportunity because they may take it. Right. So it's one of those situations. So we take all the precautions we can whenever we're doing stuff out there or anything else. I generally don't like going down and exploring into the woods and looking for all the ruins and everything else, the old homesteads by myself, because that's a good way not to come home. Not to mention down in those woods when I was younger, I mean, I just got lucky and heard a twig snap behind me, turn around, and there's a mountain lion 30 foot behind me. So, you know, one of those situations. There's a lot of stuff that can go wrong real quick if you're by yourself out there. Again, you know, I still go down there by myself. I'm usually recording or something like that, going to get game cameras or scouting out new areas just to get an idea. But yeah, that's what we're dealing with. That particular rogue, like I said, he got aggressive. It progressed quite a bit. It ended up getting to the point where I did end up shooting him several times with just a regular AR-15. Had in the magazine, I'd alternated the ammunition. Used to, we'd take and do an armor piercing, 2 fill metal jackets, and then a tracer. This time I was going between armor piercing, full metal jacket, ballistic tip, so a hunting round, and a hollow point, which is another hunting round. And I just alternated between those 4 through the magazine, thinking maybe one of them will stick, as well as changing up my idea of targets. So instead of going for solid material, you know, your chest cavity or your head, I decided to start looking for soft tissue. And it all kind of came to a boil one night whenever I had to go turn off the water in our garden. I went out there and I smelt it. And so it was one of those things, okay, where are you? I started looking around, flashlight, spotted it. It stood up. It charged me. It went from being 75 yards or so to about 30 yards from me. I'm guessing either I threw it off or I called its bluff because I stepped forward, dropped to a knee into a, you know, more stable shooting position, and I had my target. I could see very clearly this thing was a male. I can tell you that their anatomy is very much like a canine, and I had a soft target. I don't know of anything on this world that can take a shot to the groin and not go down. I don't know of anything. It worked. This thing hit the ground thrashing and rolling just like a coyote would whenever you shoot them. So I put several more rounds into it. I went for abdomen and neck, soft tissue again. It finally got its legs underneath it, and it took off away from us, or away from the house, over towards a neighboring property that has an abandoned house on it with several outbuildings. So it took off that direction. A couple of days later, there were some people out there that were working on it. Wife heard a scream and some gunshots. We don't know if it was this thing that they ran into or if they saw a skunk, if they saw a snake or whatever. Either way, they left their truck there with the door open for 2 days. So they took off from something. You know, everybody's like, well, why didn't you go check on it? Why didn't you go do this? For one, it would have been considered trespassing. 2, you're going into an unknown situation with somebody that's scared and armed. That's a good way to get yourself hurt. If you've been in law enforcement, you know quite well that's how you're going to get yourself killed. And 3, I couldn't see any bodies down there. I couldn't see any commotion. So to my knowledge, they just took off running and left. A few days later, there were some SUVs they were pulling in, some that, darked out, pulling in through the gate. The guy that was closing the gate behind them, as I was driving on the farm to market road, the entrance into that neighboring property, was in full kit. And whenever I say full kit, had an M4, he had a ballistic vest, he had pistol on his hip. So comms, all of it.
Yeah, it's not your typical. That's not your typical game warden or conservation officer.
No,
That's not.
no, it was a sweeper team. I mean,
Yeah,
they were essentially in civilian clothing, but they had their kit on. So they were out there on the neighboring property. I do know that they kind of watched me because I happened to see glint from a binocular from that area. You would think that they would have a shield on it or something like that, but they probably just suspected me being a farm boy and not knowing or paying attention. I'm sorry. It's taken a long time for me to not start hitting the ground whenever I see a reflection on a hill. So that's something that's been trained into me to be watching for, is a reflection. And I would catch a glimpse of one of the SUVs going over the hill on the backside of the property and stuff like that. But they stuck around for a little bit, but not very long. After that, I didn't ever see the brownish red one. And I don't know, I don't think I killed it because, it ran off. But it's a possibility that maybe it weakened it enough to where the others could go after it, or, somebody came and picked it up. Who knows? I don't know. I don't have the answers for that. All I know is what I experienced. And, that team was out here for a bit. We've had other suspicious interactions with unmarked vehicles, including a helicopter that did not have any tail markings on it. It had a thermal camera on the nose of it, and it was flying low enough and doing a search pattern right close to the house and over the wooded area next to the house. Whenever they banked it, I could tell that the person that was in the back, because it was a Jet Ranger, the person behind the sliding door on the back of it had a nice piece of GE equipment. One that I would love to have attached to a Jeep. But the flight pattern for it was blocked. As far as having any information on it, it was blocked. It came out of Love Field, flew over us for about an hour and a half doing a search pattern, and then it flew straight towards Abilene. So that's suspicious, especially since it was the day after we had one of our sightings. That was, later on, a year or two after the brownish red one. Or rogue, as we've started calling it. The juveniles they're like pups. Think of a 8-9-month-old dog, or even a year-old dog. They do goofy things. They're still learning. They're still curious. They're observing things, and they'll do, they haven't quite found their voice yet. They're still lanky. They're clumsy. And so that's probably the reason why we see the juveniles more than the adults, is because they're more curious. They're not as cautious, and they don't realize that the whole theory of if they can't see you doesn't mean you can't see them. They'll hide their head and you can see their tail. Those kind of things. The wife and I were out working on a fence, torn down field fencing, and we were putting up barbed wire. So we were out there and we were tearing down field fencing. We had the tractor and everything else, and we had turned the tractor off, and the wife had a loudspeaker, Bluetooth speaker playing music and everything. So we're out there and it's close to dusk, and AC/DC back in black comes on there. And next thing you know, we hear the corniest, most Scooby-Doo ridiculous howl ever come from creek bottom. And we're like, what in the, wife and I look at each other. Like, you hear that? Yeah? The hell was that? That wasn't a coyote. And we kind of look around the backside of the tractor, and we're looking down there, and here's this thing, and it looked, it was dark shape, about the size of one of the cows. I'm like, well, that must be one of the cows. And I look over to the side, and the cows are all over in the far field. I'm like, okay, that's not a cow. And so it just zooms across about 100 yards real quick, stops, lifts its head, and lets the howl out again. Anybody else, if they hadn't been dealing with these things for the past 5 years like we have, probably would have been terrified and ran in the house. My wife and I start laughing at it and making fun of it. Because why not? Let's tempt fate. And, we just, I'm like, what the heck corny stuff is that, And it takes off and goes down into the far woods in the bottom creek. The next day, some friends come out. We go fishing back there in the creek. And these are coworkers of my wife's, which are friends and everything else. And so we're back there on the creek fishing. And I'm not fishing. I took my metal detector so that I could kind of check some stuff out. Plus, I took my rifle just because of wild pigs and these things. And we're down there, one of her friends keeps on slipping on the moss and falling and busting her butt in the water and everything. And I hear something far off to our left, and I look over there, and here's one of these things sitting over on the creek dam or on the creek bank watching us. Okay, if there's one watching us, there's more. And then I start seeing one on the other side of the creek just kind of pacing back and forth on the other side, moving between the shadows. And then I hear gravel crunching back up above us and behind, up on the oilfield road. Okay, so they pretty much have us surrounded. We still have our out, which is the way that we came in, but they have us surrounded. At this time, one of the friends, he comes over to me. He goes, "Is there something over there?" And he's pointing towards the one that's sitting on the bank. I'm like, "Yeah, why?" He goes, "Because I see something there, but my mind is not letting me process it." He goes, "My mind is just shutting down." He goes, "I know there's something there. I can see it, but I cannot process it." I'm like, okay, yeah, that's what you're dealing with. And that's what I've discovered with a lot of these people that have never seen them or haven't dealt with the paranormal. The first time they've seen one, their mind will not let them process. It shuts down. It goes into a PTSD. And I mean, I've seen it on the battlefield, where somebody's mind just shuts down because they cannot process what they just saw. But yeah, we're still down there. And he's like, "Oh, okay. Do we need to worry?" I'm like, "No, they're just watching." Honestly, I think they're laughing about her falling in the water more than anything. And, eventually I said, once it starts getting sundown, then we leave. We don't, we're not going to stay down there and try to walk back to the car in dark. So we head back and everything else. And I'll catch glimpses of them behind us every so often following us out. And I suspect that the Juvenile was probably spotted by someone more so towards Farm and Market Road, because the following days, whenever we had the helicopter flying over. And of course, the wife and I are down there working on the fence when the helicopter's flying over. It finally kind of leaves after she's recording it and snapping pictures. It finally leaves. And so we kind of suspected that, all right, they're probably looking for one of them or something. Something's been spotted. They're looking for it. She plays Black and Black again. We hear a yep, and see an overgrown canine going down the creek past it. Their search pattern was about 400 yards off. If they'd come further over towards the other creek, they probably would have spotted it. But it was in some thick brush that was down on the creek, not over where they were looking.
Yeah. Do you think they monitor these things, or do you think they knew or have they been there? I mean,
your guess is as good as mine on this one. Yeah, that's one of those. That's a battle I'm not wanting to fight.
Right.
And
I've heard several reports of they just seem to show up almost in unison with these things, so you got to wonder if they knew they were there the whole time, or if they just maybe hear reports and they're checking on it. But it seems like it's almost like the Men in Black thing all over again, except with the Dogman.
Yep, exactly. So it's definitely one of those situations of it's a possibility. I really don't know.
Yeah,
excuse me.
That's fair.
Like I said, I have theories, but I don't have any solid proof on knowing what these things are or anything else. I mean, I've got evidence of them, large canine prints, the pictures, the videos of them, all those kind of things. Yeah, we've had several researchers out. I had one that was a Bigfoot researcher that didn't have much experience with Dogman. After his experience out here, he kind of disappeared. I think he kind of got out of the field completely.
Wow.
And then went to the Dogman conference, ran into Mr. Tex Wesson, and he's been out here researching with us. He's caught them on camera. He's had some close encounters with them. He's also had close encounter with the pale crawler. And, Tex is a pretty big boy. This thing one-handedly tossed him through there. And it was kind of a sketchy moment. It's brought up more questions than answers. The more we research, the more questions we have.
Yeah.
And
I was going to say, I know the Skinwalker Ranch history or the outfit. What do you think I mean, they have a lot going on, almost like with the same wolf. They not the upright, but one of the ranchers out there shot the wolf and it didn't seem to work. But they've had a lot of cryptid activity. They've had the UFOs, the orbs, the portal openings. They've had a lot of stuff going on was kind of similar to what you've got going on. Do you think any of that is kind of like starting to happen at your place, or do you think there's I don't want to stretch it too far or get too woo woo, but I mean,
we've always had portals.
okay.
We've had what I always thought was fae. So, kind of one of those things you'll see strange lights in the trees and stuff like that. You'll get voices and those kind of things. There are portals. We've caught some of those on camera. The pale crawlers seem to come out of those. It's the best we can tell. We have ley line crossing here.
That was my next question. I didn't want to ask like specifically your location, but I was going to ask that.
Yeah, there's several ley lines that cross here. And this land was known for Comanche massacres. This was along the Chisholm Trail going through here. We were on the edge of it, but we are on the Chisholm Trail, and one of the safer spots to cross one of the larger creeks up in this area is right here, and that was a prime ambush area for that. My grandfather watched the Comanche burying their dead on one of the hills out here. Well, my great-grandfather did. My great-grandparents were still fighting the Comanche out here. Eventually learned to kind of coexist, but it was one of those things of there's a lot of Native American, there's a lot of unmarked graves over here. I've found wagon wheels with unmarked graves not too far from them. That's the reason why I try to do a lot of metal detecting and stuff like that back in here, as well as a lot of the house foundations and stuff like that. Old buildings from late 1800s that are still standing, or at least you'll still find the foundation of them and stuff like that. But it's there's a lot of activity that goes on, and we're still kind of just getting into really researching all this stuff and trying to document it more. And so that's again what I've been doing on my YouTube and on my TikTok, is just trying to document some of the stuff whenever I get it, because I've tried to keep a camera on me whenever I'm out doing anything anymore. Because I mean, the other night when we went for a run and we had a green light floating there and then just shot down to the ground, and it shot down to the ground back in the back, and then shortly after we had this pale crawler come up and watching us. I suspected it at first because again, we were out for a run. It started to come up on us like it was going to come up closer until I stopped, turned around, and raised my rifle at it. Whenever I did that, it backed off back further into the tall grass. The Dogman and those things, they do not mix. They do not get along. The best I can tell. They seem to make each other nervous. And I think one-on-one, it's a coin toss. But the problem is it's never one-on-one. Other developments out here is there's another rogue that showed up. It's bigger than the previous one. It's probably as big as the alpha from the pack, if not bigger. Again, same situation. You can smell it a long ways off. This thing scares me. Just how big and how hostile it feels. It definitely makes me nervous. And it's not a constant. It's kind of one of those things of every so often you'll see a glimpse of it or something along those lines. One of the easiest ways to tell where it's at, if you see buzzards flying and there's not something dead down there, it's there.
Weird.
So you can kind of pinpoint where those are. Usually there's going to be buzzards that are close by. Other than that, it's one of those things I kind of wanted to document everything. So that's why I did the book. It kind of explains a bit about me, about, I guess, why I am the way I am. And, there's a lot more stories. And even on this, I wasn't quite going in chronological
right
order, but I was trying to give the highlights. We were going to do a live on Halloween last year, and we did end up doing a live. I was scouting out a new area beforehand, and I was recording. I didn't make it 30 yards down the trail before I had something stand up in front of me that was a big canine. And it's kind of one of those things of like, okay, not going further down that trail.
Right.
And even in the video, you can tell it got my heart rate up.
Yeah, I could tell. Yeah, it's pretty nerve-wracking even watching it sitting at the computer. So
yeah, and then of course I took that video and found the still shot, and you can very clearly see a silver and black K9 head eye level with me. So I was like, well, Okay, then. But
Have you got?
we
No, I
go
was going
ahead.
to have you gotten the impression that I mean they haven't really attacked, but have you got the impression maybe they're like almost like at a distance taking care of you guys, or like trying to maybe keep something worse from coming in? Or
Pack, yes.
okay,
The pack does. The pack is they act. So that one, it blocked me from going down that trail. I went around a different way, and I was going to start going into that area a different way. And then I see the buzzards start circling and start moving my direction. And then I caught whiff of it.
yeah,
And the buzzards were probably 100 yards away from me, and then I could smell it. So I decided to get out of there. My guess is that one was trying to keep me from getting closer to that rogue.
yeah. I mean,
Um,
they're. I mean, they're not going to come to dinner, Sunday dinner if you invite them, but they're probably going to take care of you, maybe,
yeah,
So
yeah. So it seems that way, but at the same time, I wouldn't trust it more than a wild animal.
sure, sure,
An extremely smart wild animal, but still, I wouldn't want to, walk in there and start trying to give it belly scratches.
right. And I and
My wife
I
probably would try,
oh no, yeah, you got to
but
watch
she
her.
pretty much just ignores them.
Yeah, and that might be the best thing on something. I know more about. I mean, I'm not too knowledgeable on the Dogman side of things. I know more about like the high strangeness, the UFO, UAP topics, some of the paranormal stuff. I know it seems like the more you look into some of that stuff, the more it looks back. And if you
Yeah.
just tend to ignore it, it'll kind of go away. It's like it almost feeds off of your fear. And I'm also thinking, you have a lot of high strangeness going on out there. And I'm thinking, how do we document some of this stuff? I mean, have you I'm thinking, have you like went out in the field with a EMF detector? Have you tried to like, or any, maybe even a Geiger counter? I mean, just any kind of
We've used
electronic.
Geiger counters. We've used EMF detectors. Obviously, we'll have recorders with us. So we've gotten EVPs.
Yeah. Okay.
We've had the EMF detectors skyrocket in an area that it shouldn't.
Yeah.
The Geiger counters will start going off whenever we're in an area that there's a portal. So yeah, you get several things like that we kind of document and everything else. And for the most part, I'd let the people that are researching, have that, because a lot of them do their shows. I'll come on as guests and do these kind of shows, but I don't do podcasts for myself or anything like that. All of my stuff is all just documentation stuff. So anything that I document, I'll post. All I'm trying to do is give as much information to people out there that's actually trying to find answers. I don't have answers. I don't pretend to have the answers. All I know is what I see and what I deal with.
Right. Well, you got a lot of wild stuff going on there. I mean, I could probably put you in touch with some people that would like, they have had experience with like Skinwalker Ranch and beyond Skinwalker Ranch, some of the other areas. I mean, we could talk off air. I mean, if you'd want to like have some researchers come out and like really do a deep dive on the place. But man, I've got 100 questions, but I'm not going to keep that long. But like as far as like personal feelings, what have you, or like, have you noticed any disorientation or any kind of like when like if the portals are opening or if you get near something like
Yes.
almost like, they claim Bigfoot, which has like an infrasound sort of thing, but we do know scientifically proven that like large predator cats, elephants, they can give off
Been hit by infrasound.
okay.
And then on the portals, it feels like you're walking up to a Tesla coil.
Wow. Yes,
I mean,
that's what I've heard.
it feels like your hair will start standing up. Even this hair will start standing up like a static electricity. It feels like you're walking towards one of those huge, giant Tesla coils that's set to max. The kind that bug zapper
Sure.
that's human sized. And so that's the feeling you get on those. The infrasound, I've been hit by it several times, kind of the zap thing. And it's one of those things, one of the last times I was hit by it, it didn't affect me for some reason. I could tell it hit me, but it didn't affect me like you would think it would.
Right.
And this was another rogue that apparently was just passing through. And like I said, it was kind of one of those things that did that. And I kind of looked at it and it looked at me like, wait a minute, you can see me kind of thing. And of course I was like, yelled out at it like, what the hell are you doing out here? Get out of here kind of thing. And of course it growled at me. You could feel it. It's kind of a rumble in your chest. It makes your heart rate flutter. It almost feels like somebody hits you with a sledgehammer in the chest. And the times before, it just about knocked me to my knees. That time, it kind of knock that shit off. Kind of look at it and knock that off, get out of here. And it turned and walked on its own way, and I went on about what I was doing. But I guess you could say kind of like the concussion, like an explosion concussion, if you've ever been around a flashbang. Or ever had one used on you. Yeah, same feeling.
I've used them. You not on me.
Yeah. Same feeling as being in a room with a flashbang when it goes off. A disorientation, not really sure what the heck's going on, confusion. Yeah. That's the feeling you get, or at least what I experienced.
No, and the reason I asked, I didn't see anything, but I was hiking North Alabama, just some up in the hills near Monsanto National Park. And I was setting up camp. And I was waiting on some buddies to come in later that evening. They were supposed to meet me there, and I was by myself. But I all of a sudden, like just out of nowhere, and this was probably, early mid-90s. I wasn't really thinking about this stuff at the time, but I got hit with something that I just started having an overwhelming fear of dread. Grew up in the woods, camped my whole life. I grew up in the woods. I mean, nothing scares me out there, but something hit me where I was almost paralyzed. So I did have I think I had at the time, it's like a Smith, older version of Smith & Wesson 9mm. And I went to a ready gun position, put my back against a tree, and I was like just waiting for something to happen because it felt like something really bad was about to, and I can't explain that whatsoever. And I didn't see anything. I didn't smell anything, but I felt it. And just as quick as it come on, it passed. And then I was good to go after that. And I don't know what that was. And I told the guys about it later they laughed at me later that night, but it could have been a big cat. Could have been a big cat. I don't know. But something passed through that. It shook me a little bit. So I don't know.
Yeah.
There's definitely stuff. Definitely. There's stuff out there, man. People need to really pay attention when they're out there. Listen to the sixth sense. Listen to your gut. Don't just shake it off or say it's nothing, because you're wired that way for a reason, to recognize threat, whether you see it, hear it, smell it, fear it or not. You need to listen to that sixth sense, I think.
Yeah. So. Well, you good to call it?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, man. Hey, dude, thank you so much for coming on. I really enjoyed it. I definitely want to have you back on, especially as you get updates and get more evidence, Definitely. More footage. I would love to hear about it. Love to see it. So anytime you want to come on, you're more than welcome. But real quick, if you want, oh yeah, man, I'm glad to meet you and have you. You got my number now, so if you need anything, give me a shout. But
will do.
Before we go, tell everyone about your book again and where they can find it and how they can contact you.
The book title is Welcome to Weird Shit, Texas. It is on Amazon. It's on Kindle Unlimited, or you can purchase it. YouTube is at ULLRSDEMORI. And then, of course, my TikTok is at Ullrson Demori. Those are the locations you can find me. And like I said, go ahead, read my book. I've had my test readers that really enjoyed it. So hopefully all your viewers will enjoy it as well.
Yeah, I hope so. I'm going to try and grab a copy real soon. I want to check it out for sure. I think I'm going to try and get the hard copy. I'm still old school. I like feeling the book and the pages in my hand.
And it does have a section in the back that's some of the photos from the field. So it's going to have some of the pictures and stuff, which a lot of the people, if they've got me on TikTok or YouTube, they'll see some of the pictures on there as well.
Nice. Well, cool. Well, man, I appreciate you, and just feel free to come back anytime you want and give me a shout, and we'll go from there. But
will do.
Thank you for coming on, man. I tell you what, hang out for a second, and I'll be right back to you. Okay? Let me tell everybody. All right, thanks guys for listening again to the Mysterious Huntsman podcast. I've got a really cool show coming up next week. I'll talk about it more in a few days. But if you've heard of the Sierra Sounds, you'll know what I'm talking about. They're going to be on talking to me about what he captured years ago. But with that said, have a good night, and we will talk soon, guys.